Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Brent Cook, the Director of Product Management for Summon, and thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Today, we'll be talking about the Summon Quarterly Update, give you a chance to ask any questions you might have, and touch base on a variety of other items, such as 360 and Intota services. So for our agenda today, we'll review some of the improvements you've seen this year, including our move to the Central Discovery Index, or CDI. We'll talk a little bit about the 2020 roadmap and what we've got in store for the remainder of the year, including the August release, which is coming up in 2 weeks. We'll talk a little bit about 360 and Intota and what updates you should see there. I'll give you an update on what's happening with current rights processing. We'll take a moment to review some of the responses that you gave us from a recent survey we sent out in conjunction with Aluna. So thank you for your participation there. And then we'll talk a little bit about some webinars and community involvement that we've got going on. So first, let's talk about some recent improvements, and particularly what you gained with CDI. So it's been a busy year. We've already had 2 of our 4 quarterly releases, one completed in February on the 5th and one in May on May 13th. One of the biggest things we've seen this year was the move to the Central Discovery Index, or CDI. That was launched in February. We all went live with it on February 5th. Primo customers are started then around that time as well and are continuing their move currently. What we gained from it when we did this was an improved performance. We upgraded to Solar 7. We've continued to work since that launch in February, and we've seen an improvement in speed of response for queries to the API. So that benefits everybody who uses Summon, even if you're using the Summon user interface. So we've continued. We saw improvements in speed when we launched it, and we've continued to make improvements around that since then. We've added some new facets. I'll talk some more about that in a moment. And we've changed the behavior there. We've made improvements around match and merge. We've added the ability to search for authors by ORCID. So if you type in ORCID : and then the ID in the Summon search box, that will return any authors if we have that ORCID in the index. And we've been pushing to add more ORCIDs. We started off the year with over 8 million ORCID IDs in the index, and we continue to add to that. And we added a variety of new content providers and institutional repositories. Excuse me. As I mentioned, we made some changes to some facets. We added a few things and added some sorts. You can now use a facet. There's one for author or creator. There's one around databases. You can now sort results by either title or author, which are particularly useful for smaller sets of results. For example, if you're a music student and you're looking for a particular performance of a score, the title will be similar for all of those, but then who is performing it will be different. So it's those types of things that those will help with. We also created a recently added items facet. So if something is new to the index, you can use this facet to see what was added within the last week, within the last 30 days, and within the last 90 days. And then finally, for facets, we also recently added a do not allow list for facet values. So if there's anything that's inappropriate that's showing up there, we can now remove that quickly. And that gives us time to programmatically change anything that might be causing inappropriate information to be displayed in facets. We also did a variety of improvements to match and merge. The big benefit for this for you is the reduction of duplicates. We weren't doing a deduplication against newsletters in the past. We added that to reduce the overall footprint of that type of content type. There used to not be that many duplicates around that, but with the index being over 4 billion records these days, we're seeing more and more. We improved how subtitles are handled. Something like some punctuation or an extra space could have caused it from merging in the past, and we've addressed that. That type of variation, especially in the subtitle, usually doesn't indicate a difference. So if other things match, we will merge now. We increase what we call the overmatch limit. So for records that may seem like they just have too many records combining, we'll prevent that because we're worried about errors. The challenge we're addressing there is you have things like untitled poems. There's a number of different poems that don't have a title. We wouldn't want all those to merge into a single record. So that should help out as well. We relaxed how we do matching around language. We standardized the use of quotation marks, and then we did improvements around synonyms. So things like color with or without a U no longer cause records from not merging. So you should have seen a significant reduction in duplicates. Again, this is an ongoing process. We'll continue to work on that. And we saw a really big improvement when we moved to CDI. And we've done a variety of other things too in the first half of 2020. It's been a busy year. So we made changes to linked data. We continue this project. Again, the current focus is really making sure that the pages hold and contain that linked data so that we can make those connections and leverage links to external resources. The first bit of functionality using this linked data is around exposing the metadata so that search engines can find these pages and index them so that if someone starts in Google or another search engine, they can still find your content and hopefully be led back to your site. So what this meant for you is the detail page had some improvements. The biggest piece, of course, being that back-end display of the metadata so that the search engines can processing and also making sure that any information on the page is useful for that. The page, as I mentioned, needs to invite the user to look around. It may be their entry point for your site. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of details for the resource and a variety of ways that they can take actions. For example, if you look here on this updated UI, this is what the new detail page looks like. We've changed the iconography around actions you can take on the page. We've added additional metadata information to help out with that search engine optimization, and basically made it so that hopefully if somebody lands on this page, they'll easily be able to navigate to the rest of your page or find this piece if it's what they're looking for. And again, you have ways to interact, such as sharing it and all of these site email save. And we also added WhatsApp integration. As we all work remotely these days and we interact with our patrons more and more online, we want to make it as easy as possible. So we added WhatsApp integration. As you can see from the screen grab here, when someone clicks on the chat icon, it'll start the WhatsApp chat app right there in Summon, and that person can start a chat with whomever you'd like on the back end. You just go into chat under settings in the admin console. As you can see, hopefully this red box here on the right hand side, you turn the WhatsApp chat on for the enable, and then you enter the phone number that you're going to be using, whoever's going to be answering the responses for that app. If you need somebody else to answer it, you can just go in here and change that phone number again, or the number for your WhatsApp number, whatever number that happens to be. And within about 5 minutes, that change will be taken, and whoever is answering that WhatsApp will be added or changed as a recipient. All the functionality around the chat is handled by WhatsApp, so if you need logs or things like that, you'll need to look to them for that. So let's talk about the second half of 2020 and what's planned for the Summon roadmap. So this is a standard slide we usually say to let you know that, as we do development work, things may change for the roadmap. This is particularly important to talk about in 2020 for each of the releases as we go forward, and we'll talk about that some in a minute. We are taking a look at the functionality and ensuring that whatever changes we make won't be too disruptive if you're working remotely, and that make your job and your life easier, again, as we all work from home. So the August release is almost upon us. It goes live on August 5th. The preview environment goes live on July 29th. This is a little bit different than usual. We will only have 1 week of preview for this release rather than our usual 2. Again, I want to talk a little bit about why we shortened that week up. We had a lot of functionality to get in for August. We lightened up the May release so that we wouldn't be too disruptive there, and we've adjusted some of our development timelines in order to do that and keep on track with the remainder of the year and reduce the likelihood of risk in any of these events. So not using up in either our August or November, we always keep a little bit of room for unexpected needs or expectations or things like that, or situations. So rather than taking up some of that slack, the most conservative way we could go forward, we thought, was just by shortening that preview environment up by a week. The functionality you find in the August release, for the most part, is very low impact. The majority of it is configurable by you, so you can turn it on or off. As always, when we push functionality into the production environment where it's live for your patrons, It by default will be off, and then you'll need to go in and turn it on if you'd like. If you decide that you don't have enough time to review things in the preview environment, again, the preview environment is available at all times. It's not highly available, so it may go down now and then for a little bit of maintenance for 20 minutes, but for the most part, you should be able to continue to review that functionality, so that if you need some extra time past the live date, you can certainly do that. And again, we always have a backup plan in case something goes wrong. So if you have questions, please let me know. So what are we adding as part of that August release? We've got a lot of great functionality that comes to us through the new enhancement request system, or NERS, brought to you by Aluna and Igloo. So a lot of these are things you voted on last year to get added to the Summon product. And as a reminder, we're about to start the voting for the next one, so keep your eyes open for an email for that. We really appreciate your input around these things. This first feature is about adding a section number to the course ID and course reserve page. If you have more than one section of a course without that extra course ID, it's difficult to tell which classes materials that you need. That will be added to the course reserves page. A consistent link back to search results. You gave us some feedback on how there are multiple ways to get from a different page to search results and how that can be confusing for the user. So we've made that more consistent. In particular, what I'm talking about is if you go to things like in the upper left-hand corner, that purple one you can see there has a back to results and a return arrow on the right-hand side of the page. That's the saved items folder. If you go to the advanced search form to get back to your standard results, you go to there's a link that says basic search, and it's in the middle of the page. So how it's labeled is different, as well as the location. We're going to make that consistent so that you've got a simple back to the results, which you can see there on the right-hand side on that blue screen. And it will be up at the top, excuse me, and justified with the remainder of the content on that page. So hopefully that will make navigation a little bit easier for people. We're also improving peer-reviewed labeling. You can fast it down to include only peer-reviewed items, but it is nice when you have a mixed set of results to be able to take a quick glance and find out what's there. We got a lot of positive feedback when we added the open access icon a few years ago, and now we've got the peer review there. You'll see from the screen grab there that those two will appear just underneath the icon for the result, so that's clearly labeled. To turn this on, both the open access indicator and peer review indicators are found in the same place. Go to settings under search result, which is the second option on the navigation on the left. And then at the bottom of that tile, you just switch open access indicator or peer review indicator to on if you want those, and then hit the save button at the bottom of the page and wait about 5 minutes and it will be available on your site. We'll also be adding more details around books and ebooks edition, including ebooks, excuse me. That includes edition and publication year, and also series information. That will be displayed in the brief results, as you can see here in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. Finally, we are continuing to review for accessibility compliance. We, in particular, just looked at the new WCAG 2.1 guidelines and did an internal review. We found some issues there that we need to be addressed, particularly around how elements that you add to the page are interacting with elements of the rest of the page, particularly like around Topic Explorer, taking a look at things like the related or suggested librarian, making sure that the images and emails and things like that are labeled properly for screen readers and done in the right order. We're taking a look at feedback like that and making those changes as quickly as we can in each release. We'll continue that analysis in the second half of the year. We're working with some third parties and some of you to get some feedback on accessibility, and we greatly appreciate that. And again, that will be an ongoing effort. As we discover things, we will add those to the releases. So for the November release, we will have successfully completed the August release by then. On November 4th, we will get all this great functionality. The preview environment is available 2 weeks prior to that in October. So we'll clarify author and editor and results and citations. So right now, we don't differentiate between those two, and we don't treat them, we don't have a good visual treatment for each. We will make it easier for you to distinguish between those in the brief preview results and in citations. We'll be working on integrating the A to Z list within Summon so that it's easier for patrons to find the resources that you have and that they might need. And we'll be working on a mechanism to make it easier to harvest LibAnswer FAQs to make best bets out of them. We know that a lot of you go through and maintain your information in those LibAnswer FAQs and then use those to copy and paste over to best bets. And we're looking into how we can automate that and make it easier for you. We're also looking at persistent search refinements. In addition to consistency and going back and forth between advanced search and basic search, when you move between the two, you can lose some refinements along with each search. So if you go back and forth and you create a complex query that you'd like to maintain and do multiple searches on, you can lose that as you switch between those pages. So we're making some consistency and flipping back and forth between them, and so that it's easier for you to create and modify your searches and go back and forth between basic and advanced. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing with Sierra. We are doing some integration work with that in Q4. Most of that will be back-end work, so you won't see functionality being released as part of the release. It is the first step in our initial phase. This is to better integrate with Sierra and allow for quicker access to holding or information or checking out information or things like that, and simplify administration by the staff. So our solution and scope will cover initially a single Summon Sierra institution integration, the ability to display availability, embedded in Summon, the ability to log in via Summon, the ability to request items in bib volume level, and then the ability to display a variety of account actions in Summon, so the patron can do things like renew, cancel, and edit. The target for the initial release for early access partners, so folks who are helping us with the development work, is the end of Q1 of 2021, and then we'll expand to general availability in the second half of 2021. And again, I'll keep you posted with more details as we get closer to those. In addition, along with that Sierra integration, the courtesy of Illuna and the NERS voting process, we've also set aside some resources to do some analysis around SAML, federated, or Shibboleth login options. This is the sort of starting point for a variety of improvements and functionality that people would like to see within Summon. Currently, there's a variety of different ways to log in Summon. You've got your authentication for you as a user in your library. You've got the saved items folder if you have an option there to log in. You have the saved searches. You can use Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive. So all of these various logins live on Summon. We'd like to simplify that so there's a single login for folks coming to Summon, and that's a complex project, and it's one that has been difficult to get started purely because of the size. So together with Illuna, we're working on this analysis piece to come up with a process for the best path forward for supporting this type of integration. So what does that mean? This feature will include some research outputs, and that will be initial analysis and planning. That'll include some outreach to you if you're a Summon and Sierra user, a Summon user who's interested in this, to determine what needs and priorities you might have for this type of login, and the output will include a recommendation as well as project milestones and phases, and if it is feasible to begin with. So all of the timing on the delivery for any functionality will be determined based on these outputs. So again, the output for this is a plan on how we can move forward. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about 360 and Intota and some of the updates to those services. The release schedule follows along with what Summon does, and we'll do a similar release schedule for next year, a release in each quarter. For this year, the next one is August 4th, and then the Q4 release is on the same day as the Summon release, which is November 4th. Some of the highlights of the roadmap this year, we've been doing a lot of work on counter R5 reports and access to the Summit analytics from the Client Center. So what this does is currently, if you're using Client Center, if someone wants to get access to OBI or the Summon analytics, you have to give them complete access to Client Center. By moving that link from the admin console where you make changes to the user interface into the Client Center, it gives you more controls over what level of access someone needs in order to access that analytics. You can make that more widely available to all customers. We've also done and will continue to do improvements around linking with monthly linker releases, working on improvements around Open Athens, and some IEDL enhancements. Which, for those who may not know, IEDL is your index enhanced direct linking provided by 360 Link. Also, for the user experience and accessibility, as always, we continue to review for accessibility, compliance, and making sure that people have access and can use the tools they need. So we'll do some VPAT analysis. And then something I'm really excited about is the display of a database update timestamp. And I'll show you a little more information on that in a moment. So far, it's been a very busy year for these products. Over 200 bug fixes, over 25 enhancements, improvements, over 50 new and updated 360 linkers, which again will continue to do that, and over 95 million resolved links via IEDL or OpenURL. As I mentioned, really excited about this release. It's a maintenance release, but one of the big things we're getting out of it is the last updated date for databases in 360 Core and Client Center and Intota. This has been a top item on the 7 ID Exchange. It's something you've asked me for directly numerous times, and I'm really excited to have this here. So a couple of things to note. The last full updated date is displayed, as well as the last partial update. How frequently these updates happen vary a lot between various providers. So if something hasn't been updated in a week or 3 months, that may or may not be indicative of how long it takes them to get it in versus whether or not an update actually happened. So again, this will at least give you some visibility into what's happening when there was a partial update and when there was a full update. We're also doing some work on Science Direct and doing some improvements on the linker there. So you'll see that as well in this release. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk a little bit about the current rights process. There's been a lot going on with the current rights process. We're working on it currently. We're improving the throughput and error handling. We're also adding a lot more customers as we migrate more and more people to CDI. As I mentioned earlier, we're being particularly cautious this year, making sure that everything is running as smoothly as we possibly can, and taking into consideration any changes. The end result of this is things are taking a little bit longer than they have in the past. In the past, you'd see rights updated in most cases around 24 hours, but it could take as long as 48 hours for your rights to be reflected. This extension by 24 hours to 72 hours is to ensure reliability. Again, we're continuing to work on it. Just last week, we put in an improvement to this process that sped it up by several hours. We continue to make those kind of improvements. And as we add more people and as we make these changes to the system, we want to be as cautious as possible. So again, we will process them in less than 72 hours in a lot of the cases. But if it takes up to 72 hours, don't be surprised. No need to be alarmed just yet. We'll notify you when this time frame changes. My expectation is that this will last at least through the end of the year. Next, I want to talk a little bit about a recent customer survey we did with you. We were asking you a lot of questions around the various features and the API and what you use and what you don't use. Thank you so much to all the folks who took time to respond to this survey. We had over, 161 folks fill out this survey. About 70% were using someone for over 5 years, and about 30% of respondents were using the API. So we got a nice mix of folks who had been using this for a while and using both the user interface and the API. We took a look and we analyzed the value and usage of things like the search and exploration features, customizations and activations, and integrations. So what are the types of questions we asked? We were asking how you might be using the API, what you found the use and value of those different areas I just spoke of, including search, customization, and integrations. We asked the impact of those things. Which ones do you think were the most useful for you or your patrons? We asked about improvements that you might want to see, specific features that might increase usage, and we talked about potential sharing of information and best practices. So I'd like to take a moment here to show a little bit of the use and value that you said for search and exploration features. I think one of the things that's really impressive about all the data that you're going to see here in the next few slides is that even at low usage, and I'm doing my air quotes with my fingers right now, we still have over 70% usage for most of the features, which is great. So some of the more popular features in use, greater than 90%, are the most valuable. Just a few features are greater than 10% for those who folks are just not aware of. So most people are aware of the functionality and use it, but again, we have some good engagement around all of this. In particular, in this one, you can see advanced search, citation trail, the using a journal title search from a journal link, refining your search options, and searching within the journal widget. All of those are functionalities that are shown as being valuable and used. Next, let's take a look at customization and activation. There's a strong correlation with those that are considered most valuable and used. So the things that we saw on the other screen are closely related to these things. Though there's greater opportunities for education, as you all note, the higher percentage of those that people are not aware of, particularly around customization and activation. So again, we're a little bit less aware of some of these functionalities. And as I'll talk about later in the webinar, we are putting together some education opportunities so that we can help bring up awareness around this functionality. Again, the most valuable things highlighted here are the contextual facets, the ability to expand or collapse them, the open access indicator, research article identifiers, the prioritization of resource linking, the selection and ordering of citation exports, and shorter permalinks were all things you saw as valuable customizations. So integrations, use some value there. Many of these features scored very high as far as their value. The top four identified here don't really come as a surprise. Note Leganto integration is fairly low because it does require Alma, so there aren't as many people who have access to it. For those who did respond, though, we have Alma, browsing, chat integration, and lid guides, all as important integrations. So again, we'll continue this conversation by leveraging some of these responses to work on some programs around education efforts, promoting feature awareness, the ability to use the API and what the utility is there, what the best practices are, and what are the integrations you can do. We're also reviewing all the comments that you made on what can be done to improve specific features, customizations, and activations as well. So again, for everyone who took the time to respond to this survey, thank you so much for your help. We will put that information to good use. And then finally, I want to talk about some upcoming webinars and some community participation that we have. As I mentioned, we're already starting to plan some things around some features and functionality refreshers. You should have gotten an email on the listserv today talking about a variety of webinars that we have around all Libris products. Included is this summon features and functionality refresher. We have 3 different opportunities for you to register here. We'll make sure that you have the links to check that out as well when we distribute the information after the webinar. And as always, I'll post things on the listserv. Also, just a reminder, if you have any user experience feedback or studies related to Topic Explorer or Database Recommender, please send them to me. I sent an email to the listserv about a week ago that had some details if you need that, or you can always ask me if you'd like. And thanks to those who have submitted some information so far. I've already gotten some feedback and some offers for some click data. So thank you. I really appreciate it, and that will go to good use. And again, this is in conjunction with the Topic Explorer Database Recommender Focus Group from Aluna. So we'll be reviewing this together. And again, we'll make sure we keep you posted on how we use that information. And there's my email address in case you need it to reach out to me. And this brings us to the last of our slides. Thanks again, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to attend today's webinar. If there's any questions or anything you want follow up on, as always, please reach out to me. Or always feel free to reach out to support if you need some help. I just want to take a moment to remind you that there's now the chat feature that we have on the back end so that you can get support, a direct answer from them real time during their office hours. So try that out too. And again, thank you so much, and I hope everyone is staying safe and well wherever you are.